Welcome to Sinister States.
I used to think the strangest part of commercial aviation was how normal it feels once you've done it enough. People imagine airports as liminal spaces, full of tension and possibility. But to those of us who move through them constantly, they become fluorescent corridors of routine. Boarding passes scan. Bags disappear behind rubber flaps. Doors seal with hydraulic certainty. Even fear settles into a predictable shape. That's why I didn't feel anything unusual the night I boarded a nearly empty budget flight scheduled to leave just before midnight. If anything, I felt grateful. Empty rows meant space to stretch out. A quiet cabin meant sleep. I had no idea that by morning, the only thing more unsettling than what happened in the air would be what didn't happen on the ground. The flight was operated by a regional subsidiary of a well-known low-cost carrier. I won't name the airline. There's no benefit in that, and I still don't know how much of what followed was their fault. The route itself was ordinary, a short hop between two mid-sized cities that run multiple departures daily. I'd taken it before. It was the kind of flight that exists purely for efficiency. No meals, no screens, no frills. Just a narrow-body aircraft, tight seating, and a crew trained to turn the plane around in under 40 minutes. The first irregularity was subtle enough that I almost missed it. The departure gate had changed twice in under an hour. That happens. Weather elsewhere can ripple through a network. Crew rotations shift. Aircraft swap. Still, when I arrived at the final gate, the seating area was strangely empty. Not sparse. Empty. A single agent stood behind the counter, tapping at her keyboard. The monitors displayed the correct flight number and destination. The time matched my boarding pass. But there were no clusters of passengers guarding roller bags, no families negotiating seats, no line forming early out of impatience. I approached the counter to confirm I wasn't in the wrong place. The agent glanced at my pass, scanned it without comment, and handed it back with a neutral smile. "Boarding in 10 minutes, she said. Her voice carried the flat tone of someone at the end of a shift. "Are we delayed?" I asked. "No," she replied. "Right on schedule." Behind me, the gate area remained silent. Boarding began exactly on time. There was no announcement of zones or priority groups. The agent simply stepped aside and gestured toward the jet bridge. I walked down the narrow corridor alone, the hum of airport ventilation echoing faintly off the walls. At the aircraft door, a flight attendant greeted me with the same rehearsed warmth I'd seen on dozens of other trips. She scanned my pass again, then paused briefly as if expecting someone behind me. "That's everyone?" she asked, half to herself that I turned. The jet bridge was empty. Inside the cabin, the lights were dimmed to night flight levels. The overhead bins stood open like expectant mouths. I chose a window seat halfway down the plane and placed my bag under the seat in front of me. I waited for the trickle of other passengers. None came. The door closed with a firm mechanical thud. The safety demonstration was delivered to an audience of one. I've since replayed that moment countless times, trying to recall if there was any sign of confusion among the crew. If there was, it never surfaced. The engine spooled up. We pushed back precisely at 23:57. As we taxied, I watched the runway lights streak past in parallel lines. Everything behaved exactly as it should. There were no last-minute calls over the intercom, no announcements about weight redistribution or paperwork issues. We lined up, accelerated, and lifted cleanly into the night. Once airborne, the city below shrank into a grid of sodium yellow geometry. I settled into the seat, grateful for the privacy. It felt almost luxurious to stretch across 3 seats without negotiation. The flight attendant passed through the cabin once, offering bottled water and pre-packaged snacks from a cart that seemed unnecessary given the circumstances. She didn't comment on the emptiness. Neither did I. About 20 minutes into the flight, I noticed the first anomaly. Most commercial aircraft provide some form of flight progress display, either on seatback screens or via a mobile app. This plane had neither, but I tracked our movement using a flight monitoring app on my phone. It displayed altitude, ground speed, and estimated arrival time based on publicly available transponder data. The altitude and speed looked normal for crews on a short domestic route. What didn't look normal was the map. According to the app, we had not yet left the airspace of our departure city. The aircraft icon hovered near the airport, oscillating slightly as if circling. I refreshed the app. The data updated, but our position did not change meaningfully. Signal lag, I assumed. Budget carriers sometimes use older aircraft with less consistent ADS-B transmission. I locked my phone and leaned back. 10 minutes later, curiosity nudged me awake. I reopened the app. The icon had jumped ahead abruptly, placing us almost halfway to our destination. The estimated arrival time had shortened by 12 minutes. That would have required an impossible ground speed given our departure time. I stood and walked toward the rear galley, partly to stretch, partly to gauge the crew's demeanor. The flight attendant stood near the jump seat, reviewing something on a tablet. She looked up with mild surprise. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just stretching," I replied. "How long until we land?" "About 40 minutes, she said after a glance at her device. That didn't align with the app's estimate, which now suggested 25. I returned to my seat, unsettled but not alarmed. Digital discrepancies are common. Systems update at different intervals. Civilian apps rely on aggregated feeds that can glitch. I told myself not to personalize it. The cabin felt different then. Not colder, not darker, just quieter in a way that pressed inward. With no other passengers shifting in seats or whispering to companions, the usual white noise of human presence was absent. The engine's steady roar filled the void. At some point, I must have drifted into a shallow sleep. I remember the sensation of gentle descent pulling me back to consciousness. The engines throttled down. The pitch of airflow changed. I lifted the window shade. Below us, there was nothing. No city grid. No highway ribbons. No clusters of lights marking suburbs. Just darkness. Absolute, uninterrupted darkness stretching to the horizon. Even over rural regions, you expect scattered farmhouses or distant townships. This was different. It was as if we were descending over a blank space on a map. The intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly. Please ensure your seatbelt is securely fastened." The phrasing struck me. Not, "We've begun our descent into." Not naming the destination. Just landing shortly. I checked my phone again. No signal. No map data. The app showed us still airborne at cruise altitude, hundreds of miles from where my senses told me we were. The landing itself was smooth. Wheels touched asphalt with the practiced grace of a crew that had done this thousands of times. Reverse thrust engaged briefly, then disengaged. We slowed, turned, and began taxiing. I pressed my forehead to the window. There were no terminal buildings. No other aircraft. No illuminated signage. The taxiway lights glowed in symmetrical lines, but beyond them lay only darkness. It felt like taxiing through an unfinished airport, a set built without backdrop that we rolled for longer than seemed necessary for a small facility. Finally, the aircraft came to a stop. The engines wound down. The seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin door opened. Instead of a jet bridge, portable stairs had been positioned at the forward door. A single ground crew member stood below, wearing a reflective vest that caught the plane's exterior lights but revealed nothing of his face. The flight attendant gestured toward the exit. "You're clear to disembark." I hesitated. "Is this our scheduled airport?" She met my gaze evenly. "This is your stop." There was no humor in her voice that I stepped onto the stairs. The air smelled metallic and faintly damp. The tarmac beneath my shoes was unmarked by oil stains or tire scuffs. It looked newly poured. At the bottom, the ground crew member pointed toward a small building in the distance. No words, just a gesture. I turned once to look back at the aircraft. The livery was correct. The airline logo glowed under floodlights. Everything appeared legitimate, except for the silence. Airports are rarely silent. Even at night, there's machinery, distant engines, announcements carried by wind. Here, there was only the fading tick of cooling metal from the aircraft behind me. I began walking toward the building. After a dozen steps, a thought struck me, sharp and undeniable. There had been no other passengers on that plane. If this was truly my destination, where was everyone else supposed to be? The aircraft door closed behind me. By the time I reached the midpoint of the tarmac and turned again, the plane's lights had extinguished. It sat in darkness, a silhouette against a starless sky. Then, without taxiing, without engine restart, it was simply no longer there. For a few seconds after the aircraft vanished, my mind refused to interpret what my eyes were telling it. Planes do not disappear. They taxi. They reposition. They power down into darkness gradually. They do not occupy a patch of concrete one moment and surrender it to empty air the next. I stood still long enough that the damp night air began to seep through my jacket. Somewhere behind me, beyond the edge of visibility, something metallic creaked, but when I turned toward the sound, there was nothing to anchor it. Just open space and a horizon that felt closer than it should have been. The small building ahead of me was the only structure in sight. It resembled a temporary terminal, rectangular, low, windowed only along one side. A row of lights above the entrance cast a pale glow onto the tarmac. I started walking again, each step amplifying the hollow echo beneath my shoes. The silence made my own breathing feel intrusive. Halfway there, I checked my phone again out of habit. No signal, no cached map data. The time displayed normally, but when I swiped down to refresh notifications, the interface froze for a split second before resuming. I told myself it was simply out of range of cell towers. That explanation should have been enough. The entrance door slid open as I approached, triggered by a motion sensor. Warm air met my face. Inside, the building looked more convincing than the exterior had suggested. There were check-in counters, though none were staffed. A baggage carousel sat dormant in the center of the room. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. The floor shone with a cleanliness that bordered on staged. There were no other people. No announcements echoed from hidden speakers. No monitors displayed arrivals or departures. A single digital clock hung above the far wall. It read 0:42. That was impossible. Even accounting for the scheduled flight time, we should not have landed before 01:10. I approached the carousel, expecting at least my bag to appear. The flight attendant had not mentioned baggage during disembarkation. Perhaps they intended to unload it manually. I stood there for several minutes, listening for the rumble that signals a belt starting up. Nothing happened. Hello. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. It was answered by the faint click of a door opening somewhere behind the counters. A man stepped out, dressed in what looked like airport operations attire, dark slacks, light shirt, reflective striping on a vest. He walked toward me with the unhurried pace of someone performing a familiar routine. "Evening," he said. "Where are we?" I asked before I could temper the urgency in my tone. He gave a slight smile. "You've arrived." "At which airport?" He glanced at the clock as if confirming something. "The one on your itinerary." "That's not possible," I said. "The time's wrong." "The plane," he interrupted gently. "Flights sometimes make up time." "That much." He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured toward a doorway at the side of the room. "Ground transport will be waiting for you." "For me?" I echoed. The phrasing felt deliberate. He held my gaze for a moment longer than comfort allowed, then turned and walked back toward the counters. The door behind him closed with a soft click. I stood alone again. The doorway he'd indicated led into a narrow corridor lined with unmarked doors. At the far end, another set of automatic doors revealed the outside. Beyond them, parked under a single overhead light, was a shuttle van. The van's engine was already running. I hesitated at the threshold. Something about the environment felt curated, as if the entire sequence of events had been arranged with minimal variables. Empty gate, solo boarding, isolated landing. Now a vehicle positioned precisely at the exit. It was too smooth. Still, standing in a vacant terminal accomplished nothing. I stepped outside. The shuttle's driver's side window rolled down as I approached. The driver was an older woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Her uniform resembled standard airport transport attire, but there was no visible company logo. "Name?" she asked. I gave it. She nodded once, as if checking against an internal list, and unlocked the passenger door. "Get in." "Where are we going?" I asked. "To where you were meant to be," she replied. "That doesn't answer the question." She looked at me steadily. "It does." I climbed into the van. The interior smelled faintly of disinfectant. There were no other passengers. As soon as I closed the door, the van began moving. We drove away from the small terminal building, which receded quickly into darkness. Within minutes, even its lights were no longer visible in the rearview mirror. The road ahead was straight and unmarked. No signage indicated highway numbers or nearby cities. No other vehicles passed in either direction. The headlights illuminated only a narrow strip of asphalt bordered by what appeared to be open fields. "How far is the city?" I asked. "Not far," the driver said. "Which city?" She did not respond. I leaned back in the seat and forced myself to breathe evenly. Panic would cloud observation. If this was some elaborate error, diversion to an alternate airport, perhaps. I needed clarity, not fear. Was the flight full? I asked after a moment. The driver's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "You were the only passenger." I noticed. That's why it worked. The statement hung between us. What worked? I pressed. She exhaled softly. "The route." Before I could ask another question, the van slowed. Ahead, faint lights began to appear, at first scattered, then coalescing into the recognizable geometry of a city skyline. Relief surged through me. Buildings meant people. Infrastructure. Explanation. We entered the outskirts without passing any visible welcome sign. Streetlights flickered to life as we drove beneath them. Traffic signals changed color in anticipation of our approach, though no cross-traffic existed to justify the timing. The driver navigated confidently, making turns without consulting GPS. Within minutes, we stopped in front of a mid-range hotel I recognized. I had a reservation there. She shifted into park, but did not turn off the engine. "You'll find your room ready." "How did you know where I was staying?" I asked. She looked at me in the rearview mirror. "We always know." A chill moved through me that had nothing to do with temperature. I opened the door slowly. "What airport did we land at?" "I tried one last time." She considered the question, then said, "The one that doesn't record arrivals." Before I could respond, the van pulled away, merging into the street with practiced ease. Within seconds, it blended into the sparse traffic that had materialized seemingly from nowhere. I stood on the sidewalk, staring after it. The hotel lobby was brightly lit, staffed by a single receptionist who greeted me with a rehearsed smile. "Checking in." "Yes," I said. "Reservation under." She finished my name before I could. "Of course. We've been expecting you." The phrase again. She handed me a key card without requesting identification. "You're in 814. "How did you know I arrived?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly, confused. "Your flight landed." "Which airport?" "The usual one," she said, as if the question itself were unnecessary. I took the key and rode the elevator up in silence. Inside the room, everything appeared normal. Neatly made bed, television, standard amenities. I set my bag down and immediately checked my phone. Signal bars returned at full strength. Notifications flooded in, emails, messages, routine alerts. The time now reads 01:18 that aligned with the scheduled arrival. My flight tracking app showed the plane as having landed at 1:11 at the correct airport. The map displayed a clean trajectory from departure to destination, no anomalies. The arrival status read, "On time." I stared at the screen. There was no record of a delay, no diversion, no mention of a limited passenger load. According to every accessible system, the flight had operated exactly as planned. I opened the airline's app and navigated to my boarding pass. It had been marked as used. The seat assignment remained unchanged. There was no indication that I had been the sole passenger. A thought surfaced slowly. If the official record showed a normal flight with a typical passenger count, where were those other travelers? I called the airline's customer service line, citing a minor inquiry about baggage. After navigating automated prompts, I reached a representative. Can you confirm how many passengers were on Flight 482 tonight? I asked casually. There was a brief pause as she accessed the data. Let me see. It appears the flight was at 87% capacity. My mouth went dry. 87%. Yes, she said. Is there an issue with your seat assignment? No, I replied quickly. Just verifying. I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Either every system was lying, or I had stepped into a version of events that existed parallel to the official one. I replayed the boarding in my mind. Empty gate, empty jet bridge, empty cabin. The safety demonstration delivered to vacant seats. The descent into darkness. The landing that never officially happened. I moved to the window and looked out at the city below. Traffic flowed normally. People crossed streets. Neon signs blinked advertisements into the night. It was a living, breathing urban environment. And yet, beneath that normalcy, a thin seam of doubt had opened. The driver's words echoed, the one that doesn't record arrivals. I returned to my phone and searched for news related to the airline, the route, any irregularities. Nothing surfaced. Social media posts from other passengers on the same flight mentioned smooth travel, quick baggage claim, routine inconvenience. Photos showed crowded gate areas. Selfies from row seats I had not seen occupied. One image stopped me cold. A photo taken inside the cabin, timestamped 015, showed rows filled with passengers. In the background, 3 seats, mine, appeared empty. The caption read, "Red eye almost full, but surprisingly quiet." I zoomed in. The seat numbers matched. The angle suggested it had been taken from the front of the plane, facing backward. In the image, I was not there. I checked the timestamp again. It overlapped precisely with the period when I had walked to the rear galley to speak with the flight attendant. According to this image, the plane had been crowded. According to my memory, it had been emptied. I felt the edges of my perception begin to blur, not from panic, but from contradiction too clean to dismiss. There was one more test. I opened the airline app and requested a digital receipt for the flight, something that typically includes passenger details for expense reporting. The document generated instantly. Under passengers, it listed 83 names. My own was absent. I stared at the screen for a long time, long enough that the display dimmed and reflected my own face back at me. The passenger list remained unchanged when I refreshed it. 83 names. None of them mine. Yet my boarding pass had scanned. My seat had existed. I had sat in it for hours. My name was displayed clearly at the top. But beneath it, where there should have been a ticket number, there was only a blank field. I checked the screenshot I'd taken earlier at the departure gate. In that image, the ticket number was present. Now it wasn't. A cold clarity began forming, replacing confusion. Whatever had happened was not random. It had structure. It had rules. And it was correcting itself. I moved quickly, opening my email to find the original confirmation message. The subject line was intact. The itinerary still attached. I downloaded the PDF and opened it. My details appeared normal. Name, departure time, arrival time, seat number, ticket number included. I cross-referenced it with the app. The PDF and the live data no longer matched. I checked the metadata of the PDF. Creation time, 2 weeks ago. Modified, just now that I had not modified it. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the air pressure had shifted. I walked to the bathroom and splashed water on my face, grounding myself in physical sensation. The mirror showed nothing unusual, no distortion, no flicker. Just me. Back in the main room, I turned on the television. Local news played at low volume. The anchor discussed routine city matters, traffic updates, weather forecasts, a minor power outage in a neighboring district. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing about a missing flight or unexplained landing. I muted the TV and returned to my phone. If I had not been on the official passenger list, then where had I been logged? Systems track everything. Airports run on data, security scans, boarding counts, weight distribution. A plane cannot depart with an undocumented passenger without triggering alarms. Unless the plane that carried me was not the one recorded. I opened a flight tracking website and entered the flight number manually. The path displayed as expected: departure from my origin city, steady altitude, descent into the correct destination airport. The timestamps aligned with the official schedule, not with the accelerated arrival I had experienced. The landing time displayed 01:11, but I had stepped onto a tarmac at 0:42. That meant there were two timelines separated by 29 minutes. 29 minutes in which I had disembarked from an aircraft that did not exist in public records that I zoomed in on the flight path map. For a moment, the line shimmered. I blinked, thinking it was eye strain, but when I focused again, I noticed a faint deviation, an almost imperceptible fork in the trajectory over a stretch of unpopulated land. It lasted only a few seconds before merging back into the main path that I took a screenshot. When I reopened the image from my gallery, the deviation was gone. The line was clean. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't a glitch. It was a correction. Someone, or something, was ensuring the official narrative remained intact. I considered calling someone, a friend, a colleague. But what would I say? That I'd landed at an airport that didn't exist? That a passenger list had erased my name? The story collapsed under its own improbability. Instead, I opened social media again and searched the flight number. Dozens of posts. Photos of crowded boarding areas. Complaints about limited overhead space. A short video of turbulence mid-flight, complete with nervous laughter in the background. In every image, seats were filled. Except mine. In 3 separate photos taken from different angles, 14A was empty. In one, the window shade was closed. In another, it was partially open. In the third, the seatbelt lay unfastened across the cushion. I zoomed into the reflections in the window glass, searching for my outline. There was none. My memory pushed back hard against the evidence. I remembered the hum of engines, the faint vibration through the armrest, the safety card in the pocket in front of me, the flight attendant asking if I wanted water. I remembered standing at the rear galley and asking her why I was the only passenger. Her response echoed now with new weight. It's not about seats. If the official version of events required 83 passengers, then perhaps 83 had existed, just not in my version. I checked the time again. 1:43. The discrepancy between my experience and the recorded arrival had narrowed. Soon, it would vanish entirely. I opened the hotel door and stepped into the hallway. The corridor was quiet, carpeted, evenly lit. I walked toward the elevator, my footsteps muffled. I needed to test something physical, something external to my devices. The elevator arrived promptly. Inside, I pressed the lobby button. When the doors opened, the lobby looked different. Not drastically, subtly. The receptionist was gone. The desk was unattended. The lighting seemed slightly dimmer. The digital clock behind the counter read 0:44. I froze. That was the time displayed in the terminal building. I stepped out cautiously. The entrance doors were visible across the room. Through the glass, instead of city streets, I saw a dark expanse and a single overhead light illuminating a stretch of concrete. The same isolated terminal. I turned slowly. The lobby decor was unchanged from the hotel I had entered minutes earlier, but the windows no longer revealed the city. They revealed nothing. My phone buzzed in my hand. A notification from the airline app. Thank you for flying with us. The timestamp, 00:45. I opened the message. Beneath the generic gratitude was a line I had never seen before. We hope your transition was smooth. Transition, not arrival. The lobby lights flickered once. A low mechanical hum vibrated through the floor. The entrance door slid open without being triggered. Outside, parked precisely where the shuttle had been before, was the same van. Engine running. The driver sat inside, hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. She did not look surprised to see me. I stepped toward the doorway, heart pounding but movements deliberate. The air outside carried the same sterile stillness as before. No wind. No distant traffic. Just space. The driver's window rolled down as I approached. "You went too far," she said. "I went to my hotel," I replied. She shook her head once. "You crossed over." "Crossed over where?" She studied me, as if weighing how much I was allowed to understand. "There are flights that carry bodies, and there are flights that carry vacancies." "I don't understand." "You weren't meant to land with them," she said. "You were meant to land apart." "Why?" Her gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "Because there was a seat that needed to be empty." The words felt like a riddle designed to conceal something harsher. "What happens if I refuse?" I asked. She looked past me toward the open lobby doors. "You've already seen." As if on cue, the building behind me flickered. For a split second, the facade shimmered like heat distortion, revealing the outline of the smaller terminal structure beneath the hotel exterior. Two realities occupying the same coordinates. "I want to go back," I said. "To which version?" she asked. The question struck deeper than I expected. In one version, I was a documented passenger among 83 others, arriving normally at 111, checking into a hotel in a functioning city. In the other, I was alone on a plane that never officially landed, stepping onto a tarmac at 042, greeted by systems that recognized me but refused to record me. If I chose the first, would my memory adjust? Would the empty cabin fill retroactively in my mind? If I chose the second, what would I become? A vacancy? The driver opened the passenger door without breaking eye contact. "We're running out of time." I glanced at my phone again. The signal bars had disappeared. The time read 046. The earlier 143 had been erased. The correction was accelerating. I stepped into the van. The door closed with a definitive thud. As we pulled away from the building, hotel or terminal, I no longer trusted my perception. I asked the only question that mattered. What was the flight really for? The driver kept her eyes on the road. "Balancing." "Balancing what?" She hesitated, then answered in a tone stripped of metaphor. "There are always more departures than arrivals. Sometimes we have to even the numbers." The road ahead stretched into darkness once more, unmarked and endless. I looked back through the rear window. The building we had left flickered one final time before dissolving into a structure I now recognized clearly. A small, isolated terminal on an unregistered airstrip. N.O. Hotel. N.O. City skyline. Just a place that did not record arrivals. That MY phone vibrated again. This time, it was a new message from an unknown sender. No passenger by this name was ever aboard Flight 482. Below it, an attachment. A photo. I opened it. It was an image taken inside an airplane cabin. Every seat was filled, except one, 14A. And this time, in the reflection of the window, I saw someone sitting there, not me. I stared at the reflection until my own breathing became the only sound I could hear. The figure in 14A was almost perfectly aligned with where I remembered sitting. Same posture, same angle toward the window, but the face wasn't visible. It was obscured by glare and shadow, as if the glass refused to reveal it fully. The shape existed, but identity did not. "Who was that?" I asked. The driver didn't look back. The correction. My chest tightened. "You replaced me." "No," she said evenly. "You were never placed." The van continued forward, yet the road outside had begun to change. The darkness was thinning, replaced by faint runway lights stretching into parallel lines. Not exactly. The van slowed beside a mobile staircase positioned at the rear of the plane. The door above was open, lights spilling down the steps. There was no ground crew, no sound beyond the low hum of turbines. "You can go back," the driver said. "Re-enter. Sit in 14A. Let the timeline seal properly. You'll land at 111. You'll check into your hotel. You'll forget this version. And the other option?" She finally turned to face me fully. "Stay unrecorded." What does that mean? It means existing between manifests, between counted heads. You'll move through places that don't log you. You'll see arrivals that never publish. You won't belong to either side. I looked up at the aircraft door, then back at the photo on my phone. The shadow in 14A shifted slightly as I watched, almost imperceptibly, as though aware of being observed. If I go back, I asked carefully, what happens to that? It dissolves, she said. Vacancies are temporary. And if I don't? Her answer came without hesitation. Then you become the vacancy. The wind picked up for the first time that night, brushing across the tarmac in a low sweep. The engines of the aircraft grew louder, impatient that I stepped out of the van. Each footfall toward the staircase felt heavier than the last. Halfway there, I stopped. All my life, I had assumed existence required documentation. Records, confirmations, lists, proof. But proof could be edited, deleted, corrected. That I turned slowly. The runway behind me no longer looked empty. Faint outlines of other planes shimmered at its edges, as if layered beneath reality. Aircraft without logos, without flight numbers. Waiting. I looked back at the open cabin door, then I stepped away from it. The engines roared suddenly, the sound splitting the air. The staircase retracted on its own, folding mechanically as the plane began to taxi. I didn't run after it. I didn't call out. I watched as it accelerated down the runway and lifted into the sky. This time, I saw it disappear. Not into clouds, into absence. The van behind me was gone. The runway lights flickered out one by one until only darkness remained. My phone screen dimmed, then cleared. No boarding pass. No flight history. No confirmation email. No photo of 14A. Signal bars returned gradually, steady and full. The time read 01:12. That in the distance, beyond the empty stretch of airstrip, I could see the outline of a city. Not the hotel, not the terminal, just streets. Open, unrecorded. I began walking.